In this lesson, we'll start building the website from these wireframes. Of course, we'll start with the home page and we'll see how we can style this nav bar. So in Coda, I have my document set up. I have a basic starter HTML in which I include the Bootstrap CSS, the Bootstrap responsive CSS, and also a custom CSS, which currently is blank. Okay, but we'll use this at the very end for just some finishing touches. At the bottom, I have jQuery and a bootstrap.js file, which contains all of the plugins. So I've installed like a full version of Bootstrap with all the CSS and all the plugins. Okay, let's see about the nav bar. So we have the company logo, and then the navigation, and finally a search form. So let's begin with a div with a class of navbar. This is how you basically start. Afterwards, I want my navbar to be dark, so we'll use the navbar inverse class. And lastly, I want my navbar to be fixed on the top. So navbar fixed top. Alright, then we'll do navbar inner, and inside it we'll do a div with a class of container, just to center the content inside the navbar. The company name will be an A with a class of brand. It will go to index.html, and it's just gonna say company name. Alright, so far so good. Next, let's deal with this navigation. Now the navigation, we might as well make it responsive. So we gotta place it in a div with a class of collapse and nav collapse. Alright, so what do we have? We have a nav and a search form, which will place it in the same div. It's going to be responsive as well. So let's do ul with a class of nav, which contains 4 list items, each one with an anchor tag. Alright, so the first one will go to index.html. It's also the active one since we're on the home page. So class active, and it's going to say home. Okay, the next one is products. So we should go to products HTML. The next one is about us. And the last one is the contact form, which, as I've said in the previous lesson, will be a modal window. So instead of giving it an href, we're going to say data toggle equals modal, and then data target equals the ID of the modal window. It's not created yet, but let's give it an ID now. For example, modal contact form, and we'll build that form later on. Finally, the text should say contact us. All right, let's have a look. Home, products, about, contact us. All right, pretty good. Let's see about that search form. So right above this, we're going to say form with a class of navbar search. We can use this class to style the form differently. And this form will contain an input. Type should be text. And also we'll give it a class of search query. Oops, like this. And also a placeholder. Let's say search. Okay, this is our navbar so far. Now the mockup says the navigation is first and then the search bar. So let's do that. We'll add the class of pull right to both the form and the nav. And there it is. All right, let's see the responsive test. Resize the browser window. and we have no trigger right now for collapsing that menu. So let's go ahead and add the trigger. Let's see, right here on the top, we're going to do an anchor tag. href doesn't really matter right now. Instead, we'll do data toggle equals collapse, and then data target will be nav collapse, which is this one right here. We'll also give it a class of btn and btn navbar. And this is very important because it will style it differently. So for now, if we say toggle and resize our page, there it is. Click it, and the menu is now shown. Now, instead of the toggle text, we'll do a simple span with a class of icon bar, which will represent an horizontal bar. We'll do this 3 times to represent the classic responsive menu button. Alright, and there it is. Great, so the menu is done. Let's move on to the featured product area. Alright, as you can see, the content here is divided in 2. We have the first section, which can be represented by about 4 columns in our grid. It has the title and the call to action, and the second part has the image. So let's do that. All right, we'll say featured product. We'll start with we'll start with a section, just to be more semantic, and then a div with a class of container. All right, and we'll start div class row. We're using columns, yes, which contains a div with a class of span 4 for 4 columns, and then a span 8 for the rest of the columns. All right, the first div contains the product name, which should be an H1. Let's say featured product. And then the tagline, which we can put as a heading, but also I think a paragraph with a class of lead should work better. So paragraph class lead, let's just do some basic text. Now we do have a slight problem here because when using the navbar fixed top, we must account for the 40 pixels behind the navbar. So we must add some padding top to the body tag. Let's fire up our custom.less file and say body padding top 5 ms, for example. Great, let's move on to the buttons. We have 2 buttons which we can very well place in a button group. So let's check it out. Paragraph class lead, and then we'll say div with a class of btn group, and we'll do 2 links with a class of btn. And let's check it out. The first one should say buy now, and the second one should say free trial. All right, pretty good. Let's add a different color to the first one. For example, btn info. Okay, and let's make them bigger. So btn large to both buttons. Nice. Finally, we have a small text right here, a small link actually. So let's go ahead and add that in a paragraph which contains an anchor tag. Okay, something like that. Now this should be positioned differently. For example, it needs a bit of margin top, but we'll do that in the very last video, the one with the finishing touches. Finally, we have to include this image right here, and inside the div with the class of span 8, I'm just going to do img. Source will be img. Custom, I have a few custom images that I've already prepared for this tutorial. .jpg. Okay, and it's just a screenshot of the new tutsplus hub. Okay, that's pretty much it. In the next video, we'll take care of the rest of the homepage, including the company area, the testimonials, and also the footer. So I'll see you there.